Even today, I still think about it. If Marcus had stayed silent that night, maybe 300 homes would have gone dark. Welcome to Truth Turn Stories, where hidden truths come to light. He wasn't supposed to hear it. He was just a janitor, pushing a mop through a billion-dollar building after midnight. Invisible, ignored, safe. Then he heard the words that froze him in place. 300 jobs, a millionaire laughed. Gone by Monday. 300 lives. 300 families, erased like numbers on a screen. Marcus stood there, heart pounding, knowing one thing: if he stayed silent, no one would ever know. If he spoke up, he could lose everything. And in that quiet hallway, with a mop in his hands and fear in his chest, a man the world overlooked was about to make a decision that would change hundreds of lives forever. The laugh came first. Low. Easy. The kind of laugh that did not ask permission to exist. It floated through the hallway like it owned the air. Marcus stopped, mid-step. The mop head hovering just above the marble floor, water dripping in slow, uneven drops that echoed louder than they should have. His chest tightened before he even knew why. Something in that laugh carried weight. Something dangerous. Midnight lived differently inside the glass tower. During the day, the building shined like a promise. Lights everywhere. Voices layered over each other. Shoes clicking with purpose. But at night, it told the truth. The lights dimmed. The echoes stretched. The walls felt colder. The marble floors no longer reflected ambition, only exhaustion. And almost no one stayed this late. Almost no one except Marcus. He had learned the rhythm of the night shift the way other people learned music. Which lights stayed on. Which elevators groaned before stopping. Which corners carried sound and which swallowed it whole. He moved with care, pushing his mop slowly, gently, like he was afraid the building itself might wake up if he rushed. He had learned that quiet kept him safe. Quiet made him invisible. Invisible meant no trouble. Marcus had been invisible most of his life. He angled the mop toward the long hallway outside the executive boardroom, the one with frosted glass walls and a door thick enough to keep secrets inside. He usually cleaned it last. Something about that space always made his shoulders tense. It felt heavier than the rest of the building, like the air itself knew decisions were made there that never touched the ground floor until it was too late. That was when he heard the voices, not whispers. Not cautious murmurs. These voices were relaxed, confident, untouchable. Men who had never needed to lower their voices because consequences had never reached them before. Marcus slowed even more, instinct kicking in. He had learned to listen without being seen long before this job. Long before this building. The mop wheels rolled softly. The scent of bleach hung sharp in his nose. Inside the room, the laugh came again. 300 jobs, one man said, his voice smooth, almost amused. Gone by Monday. No leaks, no guilt. The words hit Marcus harder than any shot ever could. His hands locked around the mop handle. His fingers stiffened. His breath caught halfway in, like his lungs forgot how to work. 300 jobs. The number echoed in his head, bouncing off memories he didn't ask for. 300 wasn't just a number. It was Mrs. Langley on the third floor, who always brought extra lunch, because her husband's hours had been cut last year. It was the security guard who talked about his daughter's college applications like they were lottery tickets. It was his cousin Darnell, who had finally gotten a steady paycheck after years of bouncing between temp work and night shifts. 300 jobs meant rent. It meant insulin refills. It meant bus passes and school shoes and groceries that didn't come from the clearance shelf. It meant survival. Marcus swallowed hard. Another voice joined in, lower, colder, the kind of voice that didn't waste emotion on things it planned to erase. They'll never see it coming, the man said. We'll outsource. Cheaper, cleaner, cleaner. Marcus took a step back without thinking. His heel brushed the marble. The squeak was small, almost nothing. But it was enough. The laughter inside stopped instantly, like someone had cut the power. Silence fell so fast it rang. Marcus's heart slammed against his ribs. He froze, every muscle screaming at him not to move. The mop tilted slightly, water spilling onto the floor in a thin, traitorous line. The boardroom door shifted, opened just enough. First, Marcus saw the shoes. Italian leather, polished to a mirror shine. Shoes that had never known dust, let alone bleach water. Shoes that cost more than Marcus made in a month. Then he saw the man. The face was everywhere in the building. Framed photos in the lobby. Magazine covers behind glass. The name etched in steel letters outside the entrance, glowing softly even at night. The billionaire, CEO. The man who decided futures between meetings and lunch reservations. The man whose voice Marcus had just heard discussing lives like loose change. The CEO's eyes landed on Marcus and stayed there. No anger, no fear, just a flat, dismissive stare, like Marcus was a stain someone forgot to clean. "You're still here?" the CEO asked, not harsh, not curious, bored. Marcus lowered his eyes instantly. He had learned that too. Eye contact invited questions. Questions invited trouble. "Just doing my job, sir," Marcus said quietly. The words felt small even as he spoke them. He hated how practiced they sounded, like armor he had worn too many times. The CEO nodded once, already losing interest. The door closed without another word. The voices resumed. Laughter returned. Play continued. 300 jobs erased again, smoother this time, like the moment of interruption had been nothing more than a fly buzzing past a window. Marcus stood alone in the hallway. The mop water soaked into the marble, leaving a dull streak behind. His heart pounded so loud he was sure someone would hear it. Each beat felt like a warning, like something inside him was trying to wake him up. He stared at the door. Behind it, decisions were being made that would break people who would never know who broke them. Men with names on doors would sleep peacefully while others stared at ceiling. At 3 in the morning, counting breaths and bills. Marcus felt small, smaller than he had in years. He thought about all the times he had been told to stay quiet, to keep his head down, to be grateful for whatever scraps came his way. He thought about how often silence had protected him, and how heavy it suddenly felt now. He pushed the mop again, mechanically, moving back and forth like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just heard something that made his chest ache. But the hallway felt different now. Every sound felt louder. Every reflection in the glass felt like an eye watching him. The building no longer felt empty. It felt full of things he was never meant to hear. Marcus finished the flow. Oren moved toward the supply closet, his hands shaking just enough that he had to grip the mop tighter. He tried to tell himself it wasn't his problem, that it wasn't his place, that people like him didn't survive by stepping into rooms they weren't invited into. Still, the words followed him. 300 jobs, no leaks, no guilt. He clocked out and stepped into the night air, the city humming quietly around him. The glass tower rose behind him, tall and unbothered, its lights glowing like nothing inside it could ever break. Marcus sat in his car for a long time without turning the key. His reflection stared back at him in the dark windshield. Tired eyes, worn hands. A man who cleaned up messes but was never supposed to see how they were made. He thought about going home, about sleep, about forgetting what he heard. But silence pressed in on him again, heavy, crushing. He heard something he was never meant to hear, and for the first time in a long time, being invisible didn't feel safe at all. It felt like a choice. The next morning, Marcus did not sleep much. The ceiling above his bed felt too close, like it was listening. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the laugh again. Smooth, easy, like nothing in the world could touch it. By the time his alarm went off, his chest already felt tired, like he had been running all night without moving. He went to work early, earlier than usual. The building looked the same in the morning light, clean and proud, glass shining like it had nothing to hide. People poured in wearing pressed clothes and carrying coffee cups, talking about meetings and weekend plans. No one looked worried yet. That almost made it worse. Marcus waited until his supervisor came out of her office. She was scrolling on her phone, walking fast, heels clicking sharp against the floor. He followed her for a few steps before she noticed him. "Excuse me," he said softly. She sighed, already tired of the interruption, and turned halfway toward him. Her eyes flicked to her phone again while he spoke, like he was background noise. "I heard something last night," Marcus said. "In the boardroom. About layoffs, a lot of them." She stopped walking but didn't look at him. Her thumb kept moving across the screen. "Marcus," she said, her voice flat, "stay in your lane." He swallowed. "I don't think you understand," they said. "I understand just fine," she cut in, finally lifting her eyes. There was no anger there, just impatience. "You clean floors. You don't clean boardrooms. That's not your concern." She walked away before he could say another word. The hallway felt longer after that. Marcus stood still for a moment, mop cart beside him, watching her disappear into the crowd. He felt something settle in his stomach. Heavy. Familiar. The feeling of being placed back where people thought he belonged. He told himself not to stop there. Found a manager next, a man with a tight smile, and a voice that sounded polite but empty. Marcus explained again, slower this time, choosing his words carefully. The manager nodded as if listening, then glanced at his watch. "That's a serious claim," the man said, "but I'm sure if there were plans like that it would be handled appropriately." "So you'll look into it?" Marcus asked. The man smiled wider. HR handles those matters. HR listened with their hands folded and their heads tilted. They asked Marcus what time it happened, what exactly he heard, whether he was sure he didn't misunderstand, whether he had any proof. When he said no, just his word, the tone changed. "Well," the woman said gently, like she was talking to a child, "we appreciate your concern. But rumors can be dangerous. You should be careful about spreading things you don't fully understand." Security didn't even pretend to listen. Each door closed softly. No shouting. No threats. No raised voices. Just polite dismissal after polite dismissal. That hurt more than anger ever had. Smiles followed him everywhere. Tight smiles, patient smiles, smiles that said he was harmless. Smiles that said he wasn't important enough to be dangerous. By midweek, Marcus noticed the whispers. They didn't stop when he walked by, but they softened. Voices lowered. Conversations ended early. People huddled closer together in stairwells and corners. The word layoffs floated through the air like smoke. You couldn't see where it came from, but you could smell it everywhere. Fear moved through the building slowly, quietly, the way cold does. Marcus watched people in ways he never had before. He saw a woman in accounting carefully fold her lunch bag like she didn't want to waste anything. He saw two coworkers compare calendars, counting days until rent was due. He saw a man sit alone in the break room, staring at his phone so long his coffee went cold. In the restroom, Marcus heard quiet crying behind one of the stalls. The kind that tried not to be heard. The kind that pressed a hand to the mouth and hoped it would pass. He stood there, longer than he should have, pretending to clean the mirror, unsure what to do. He didn't knock. He didn't speak. He just waited until the sound stopped. Everywhere he looked, he saw people who didn't know yet. People who felt something coming but couldn't name it. People who still believed the building would protect them. By Friday, Marcus felt like he was carrying a secret too heavy for his body. That night he sat in his car after his shift ended, hands resting on the steering wheel, keys untouched in the ignition. The parking lot lights hummed softly above him. Cars came and went. People laughed. Someone argued on the phone nearby. Life kept moving like nothing was wrong. Marcus argued with himself in the quiet. Who would believe him? A black janitor versus a millionaire CEO. He pictured the boardroom again. The shoes, the voices, the way the door closed without hesitation. He imagined trying to explain that scene to someone who had never been invisible before. Someone who had never been told, without words, that their place in the world was fixed. He thought about what would happen if he kept pushing. He could lose his job, his insurance, the small sense of stability he had fought so hard to keep. He thought about how easy it would be for them to say he misunderstood, or lied, or imagined it. The building had lawyers. He had a mop. The words echoed in his head again. No leaks, no guilt. He leaned forward and rested his forehead against the steering wheel. For a moment, he wished he could forget everything. Go back to the version of himself who only worried about clean floors and full trash bins. But that version was gone. He remembered his mother's voice from years ago, sitting at the kitchen table with bills spread out like cards. She had been tired. Worn. But her eyes had been steady. Dignity doesn't mean silence, she had said. It means standing even when you're shaking. At the time, he hadn't understood what she meant. Now, sitting alone in his car, he did. The weekend passed too slowly. Marcus spent Saturday cleaning his apartment, even though it was already clean. He needed something to do with his hands. On Sunday, he went for a long walk, letting the cold air bite his face, hoping it would clear his head. It didn't. By Sunday night, the weight in his chest hadn't lifted. If anything, it had grown heavier. He drove to work even though his shift didn't start yet. The building looked different at night now, less neutral, less silent, like it was holding its breath. Marcus signed in and moved through the halls without turning on many lights. He passed offices where people had left family photos and mugs behind, assuming they'd be back Monday. He wondered how many of those desks would be empty soon. He reached the supply closet and stopped. For a moment, he stared at the mop. Then he pushed it aside. This time, he didn't fill the bucket. He didn't check his list. He didn't start cleaning. He moved slowly down the hallway toward the boardroom, heart pounding louder with every step. The same hallway. The same cold marble. The same frosted glass. The door was closed. Lights were on inside. Marcus pressed himself against the wall, close enough to hear but far enough to stay hidden. His palms were sweaty. His breathing shallow. Every instinct told him to leave. To go back to doing his job. To choose safety. But his feet didn't move. Voices drifted through the glass again, confident, relaxed. Marcus leaned closer and listened. The boardroom was almost completely dark, not the kind of dark that felt peaceful, but the kind that made every sound feel louder, every movement feel watched. One screen glowed at the far end of the room, casting pale blue light across the long table and the empty leather chairs. The presentation was playing on a loop, clicking forward every few seconds by itself, like it didn't need anyone there to approve what was coming next. Marcus stood just outside the door at first, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might knock him backward. His hand hovered near the handle. He told himself this was the last line. Once he crossed it, there was no going back, no pretending he hadn't seen, no returning to the safety of silence. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The smell of polished wood and expensive cologne still hung in the air. Even though the men were gone, Marcus moved slowly, careful, each step sounding too loud in his own ears. The glow from the screen reflected off the table, sharp and cold. He pulled out his phone, hands shaking, and lifted it toward the screen. The slides changed, projected timelines filled the wall, charts rising, bars falling, dates circled in red. There were email chains on the screen too. Names blurred out, but language clear and clean and cruel. Words like efficiency, streamlining, strategic reduction. Then the title appeared. Human Reduction Strategy. Marcus felt his stomach twist. He zoomed in with his phone, breath shallow, trying to keep the frame steady. The camera shook anyway. Numbers replaced names. Departments reduced to lines. People reduced to costs. 300. The number appeared again and again, tucked into corner of slides, buried in footnotes, treated like a problem to be solved instead of lives to be protected. Marcus recorded everything. The slides, the emails, the timelines. His hands trembled, but he didn't stop. For a moment, he imagined someone walking in, imagined the doors swinging open, and the CEO standing there again. Eyes cold, voice bored. He imagined being fired on the spot, escorted out. Labeled a troublemaker? Still, he kept recording. When the presentation looped back to the beginning, Marcus stopped the video and lowered his phone. His chest felt tight, like he'd been holding his breath for too long. He looked around the room one last time, at the empty chairs, at the long table where decisions were made without faces attached to them. Then he turned off the lights and left. The next morning, Marcus did not go to HR. He did not knock on closed doors or ask people who smiled politely to listen again. He didn't explain himself. He didn't apologize. He didn't ask permission. Instead, he sat in his car outside a small coffee shop, phone resting on his knee, staring at a contact he had saved the night before. A labor journalist. He had found her name late at night, scrolling through articles about factory closures and corporate layoffs. She wrote about people who never made headlines, about janitors, warehouse workers, call center employees. She believed the unseen. Marcus typed out a message, erased it, typed again. His fingers hovered over the screen for a long time. Then he attached the video and hit send. No name, no explanation beyond a few lines. Just the truth, captured in blue light. He sat there until his coffee went cold. By noon, the story broke. At first, it appeared quietly, like a crack in glass. A single article shared a few times, a headline that asked questions instead of making claims. Anonymous source. Internal documents. Planned layoffs concealed from staff. Marcus was mopping a hallway when his phone buzzed. Then buzzed again, then again. People around him started checking their phones. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Someone gasped softly, another person whispered, "Is this real?" By afternoon it exploded. Headlines grew louder, sharper. Words like exposed and leaked and secret plan filled screens across the building. Shareholders reacted fast. Calls were made. Emails flooded inboxes. The company's stock dipped. Then dipped again. Employees gathered in small groups, phones held out between them like proof. Some stared in disbelief. Some looked angry. Some looked scared. A few cried openly, no longer bothering to hide it. Marcus watched from the edges, his uniform making him blend into the walls the way it always had. No one looked at him. No one knew. The CEO's office door slammed. It was a sound Noah had ever heard before. The glass walls vibrated, heads turned. Conversations died instantly. The building held its breath. Meetings were canceled, then rescheduled, then canceled again. Executives moved quickly through the halls, faces tight, voices low. Security stood straighter. Receptionists stopped smiling. An emergency meeting was called. This time, Marcus was invited. The email appeared in his inbox with no explanation, just a time, a room, his name typed clean and formal, like it belonged there. Marcus stared at the screen for a long moment. His heart raced, but his hands were steady. He didn't change his clothes. He didn't borrow a suit. He didn't try to look like anyone else. He walked into the boardroom wearing the same uniform, same scuffed shoes, same worn hands, but the room felt different. The chairs were filled now, but no one was relaxed. No one laughed. The long table no longer felt like a throne. It felt like a courtroom. People shifted in their seats when Marcus entered. Some looked confused. Some looked uncomfortable. A few looked ashamed. The CEO stood at the head of the table. Not sitting. Standing. His posture was stiff. His jaw tight. The confidence that once filled the room had cracked, just enough to let something else show through. "I underestimated you," the CEO said. The room went silent. "I assumed you were invisible," he continued, voice controlled but strained. "I assumed you didn't matter." Marcus felt the weight of every eye on him. He stood straight, shoulders back, heart calm in a way that surprised him. He thought about all the times he had been told to stay quiet. All the times he had been dismissed with a smile. He met the CEO's eyes. "You weren't listening," Marcus said. His voice was steady, clear. "I always was." The words hung in the air. No one interrupted, no one laughed, no one looked away. The CEO swallowed. That afternoon, the layoffs were canceled, emails went out fast. Official language, careful words. Statements about revaluation and values and listening to employees. But the message underneath was simple. 300 jobs were saved. 300 families breathed again. Marcus walked out of the boardroom the same way he had walked in. Quiet. Unassuming. But the building felt different now, like it knew him, like it could no longer pretend he wasn't there. The power had shifted, and everyone felt it. A week after everything changed, the company gathered in the main atrium, not for a celebration, not for a launch. No music played, no lights flashed. People stood shoulder to shoulder, some holding coffee they hadn't touched, others clasping their hands like they were waiting for a verdict. The air felt different, heavier, honest in a way it had never been before. The CEO stepped forward. No rehearsed smile stretched across his face. No applause cue waited in his pause. The man who once spoke in polished phrases and safe language stood still, hands resting at his sides, eyes scanning the crowd without rushing past anyone. "I was wrong," he said. The words landed softly, but they landed. "Not legally," he continued. "Morally." Silence followed. Not the awkward kind, the listening kind. People shifted. Some lifted their heads. Some blinked fast, like they were trying to understand what they were hearing. A few held their breath. The CEO spoke about changes. Departments restructured. Worker representation added. New transparency policies announced. He used careful words, but not hiding words. He spoke slower than usual, like every sentence mattered now. But the real change wasn't in what he said. It was in how the room felt when he finished. No applause broke out. No one clapped on command. Instead, people looked at each other. Some nodded. Some wiped their eyes. Some stood straighter, like they had been reminded of something they forgot they deserved. Marcus stood near the back, his uniform blending into the edges of the room like it always had. He didn't step forward. He didn't need to. He felt eyes move toward him anyway. Not all at once, slowly, and not with pity. Not with shock, with respect. That was new. In the days that followed, the building returned to its routines, but nothing felt the same. Meetings happened, emails flew, work continued. The floors still needed cleaning. The trash still needed emptying. The smell of bleach still clung to the halls late at night. Marcus kept his job. Same mop. Same cart. Same quiet movements. But people saw him now. When he passed through the hallways, heads lifted, people nodded. Some smiled, not the tight, polite smiles from before, but real ones. Sometimes someone stopped him. "Thank you," they said quietly. A woman from accounting brought him coffee one morning and didn't rush away afterward. A security guard clasped his shoulder in passing. A man he had only ever seen staring at spreadsheets met his eyes and said, "You saved my job." Marcus never quite knew what to say to that. He would nod, sometimes smile, sometimes just listen. The building felt warmer somehow. Less sharp around the edges, like it had learned something and was still trying to practice it. One evening, long after most people had gone home, Marcus was finishing up near the executive floor when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned, expecting security. It was the CEO. No suit jacket. Sleeves rolled up. Tired eyes. They stood there for a moment, the quiet stretching between them, not awkward, just real. "I built an empire," the CEO said finally, voice low almost to himself, "and nearly destroyed lives without hearing a single voice. Marcus rested both hands on the mop handle and nodded once. He didn't rush to respond. Power doesn't make you blind, Marcus said after a beat. It just gives you the choice to look away. The CEO exhaled slowly, like the words hit something deep. He nodded back. No argument, no defense, just understanding. They stood there another moment before the CEO thanked him again, this time with a ceremony, and walked away down the hallway. Marcus returned to his work. The floor still needed cleaning. The building still needed care. Life didn't suddenly turn perfect, but something had shifted under the surface. 300 families went home with paychecks that month, with groceries bought without panic, with rent paid on time, with school plans that didn't have to be canceled, with dignity intact. Marcus watched people leave the building on Fridays laughing again lighter, holding doors open for each other. He watched a father swing his kid into the air in the parking lot. He watched relief move through the place like sunlight after a storm. He understood something too. He hadn't become powerful. He had always mattered. The world just finally listened, and the lesson traveled farther than that glass tower ever could. Never confuse position with worth. Never assume silence means ignorance, and never forget that sometimes the people you overlook are the only ones truly paying attention.